Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 894th night, she resumed, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the Caliph Harun al-Rashid asked Nur al-Din of his adventures, and was told of all that had passed, first and last, he was astonished with extreme astonishment, and exclaimed, How manifold are the sufferings that men suffer! Then he turned to the princess and said to her, Know, O Miriam, that thy father, the king of France, hath written to me anent thee. What sayest thou? She replied, O vicar of Allah on his earth, and executor of the precepts of his prophet, and commands to man's unworth, may he vouchsafe thee eternal prosperity, and ward thee from evil and enmity. Thou art vice-regent of Allah in his earth, and I have entered thy faith, for that it is the creed which truth and righteousness inspire. And I have left the religion of the miscreants who make the Messiah a liar. And I am become a true believer in Allah the Bountiful, and in the revelation of his compassionate apostle. I worship Allah, extolled and exalted be he, and acknowledge him to be the one God, and prostrate myself humbly before him, and glorify him. And I say before the Caliph, Verily, I testify that there is no God but the God, and I testify that Mohammed is the messenger of God, whom he sent with the guidance and the true faith, that he might make it victorious over other religions, albeit they who assign partners to God to averse from it. Is it therefore in thy competence, O commander of the faithful, to comply with the letter of the king of the heretics, and send me back to the land of the schismatics who deny the faith, and give partners to the all-wise king, who magnify the cross, and bow down before idols, and believe in the divinity of Jesus, and all he was only a creature? And thou deal with me thus, O vice-regent of Allah, I will lay hold upon thy skirts on the day of muster before the Lord, and make my complaint of thee to thy cousin, the apostle of Allah, whom God assain and preserve. On the day when wealth availeth not, children save one come unto Allah wholehearted. Answered the Caliph, O Miriam, Allah forfend that I should do this ever. How can I send back a Moslema, believer in the one God, and in his apostles, to that which Allah hath forbidden, and eke his messenger hath forbidden? Quoth she, I testify that there is no God but the God, and that Mohammed is the apostle of God. Rejoined the Caliph, O Miriam, Allah bless and direct thee in the right way of righteousness. Since thou art a Moslema, and a believer in Allah the One, I owe thee a duty of obligation, and it is that I should never transgress against thee, nor forsake thee, though be lavished unto me on thine account the world full of gold and gems. So be of good cheer, and eyes clear of tear, and be thy breast broadened, and thy case not save easy. Art thou willing that this youth Ali of Cairo be the man, and thou to be him wife? Replied Miriam, O Prince of true believers, how should I be other than willing to take him to husband, seeing that he bought me with his money, and hath entreated me with utmost kindness, and for crown and for his good offices he hath ventured his life in my sake many times. So the Caliph summoned the Kazi and the witnesses, and married her to him, assigning her a dowry, and causing the grandees of his realm to be present, and the marriage day was a notable. Then he turned to the vizier of the French king, who was present, and said to him, Hast thou heard her words? How can I send her back to her father, the infidel, seeing that she is a Moslema, and a believer in the unity? Belike he will evil entreat her, and deal harshly with her, more by token than she hath slain his sons, and I shall bear blame for her on resurrection day. And indeed, quoth the Almighty Allah, will be by no means make a way for the infidels over the true believers. So return to thy king, and say to him, Turn from this thing, and hope not to come at thy desire thereof. Now this wazir was a zany. So he said to the Caliph, O commander of the faithful, by the virtue of the Messiah and the faith, which is no liar, were Miriam 40 times a Moslema, and 40 times thereto, I may not depart from thee without the same Miriam. And if thou send her not back me of free will, I will hie me to her sire, and cause him dispatcheth thee an host, wherewith I will come upon you from the landward and the seaward, and the van whereof shall be at your capital city, whilst the rear is yet on the Euphrates, and they shall lay waste to thy realm. When the Caliph heard these words from the accursed wazir of the king of France, the light in his eyes became night, and he was wroth at this speech with exceeding wrath, and said to him, O damned one, O dog of the Nazarenes, art thou come to such powers that thou dost assail me with the king of the Franks? Then quoth he to his guards, Take this accursed, and do him die. And he replayed this couplet. This be his recompense who will oppose and thwart his better's will. Then he commanded to cut off the wazir's head and burn his body. But Princess Miriam cried, O commander of the faithful, soil not thy sword with the blood of this accursed. So she sang. She bared her brand and smote him, and made his head fly from his corpse. And he went to the house of ungrace. His abode was Gehenna, and evil is the abiding place. The Caliph marveled at the force of her forearm and the strength of her mind, and they carried the dead wazir forth of the pavilion and burnt him. Then the commander of the faithful bestowed upon Nur al-Din a splendid robe of honor, and assigned to him and her a lodging in his palace. Moreover, he appointed them solde and rations, and commanded to transport to their quarters all they needed of raiment and furniture and vessels of price. They sojourned a while in Baghdad in all delight of life and solace, thereof till Nur al-Din longed for his mother and father. So he submitted the matter to the Caliph, and sought his leave to revisit his native land, and visit his kinsfolk, and he granted him permission. He sought, and calling Miriam, commended them each to each other. He also loaded them with costly presents and rarities, and bade write letters to the emirs, the Olema, and notables of Cairo, the God-guarded, commending Nur al-Din and his wife and parents to their care, and charging them honor them with the highmost honor. When the news reached Cairo, the merchant Taj al-Din joyed at the return of his son, and Nur al-Din's mother likewise rejoiced therein with passing joy. The emirs and the notables of the city went forth to meet him in obedience to the Caliph's injunctions, and indeed it was for them a right noteworthy day, wherein foregathered the lover and the beloved, and the seeker attained the sought. Moreover, all the emirs made them bride feasts, each on his own day, and joyed in them with joy exceeding, and vied in doing them honor, one the other succeeding. When Nur al-Din foregathered with his mother and father, they were gladdened in each other with the utmost gladness and joy, and affliction ceased from them, whilst his parents joyed no less in the Princess Miriam, and honored her with highmost honor. Every day there came to them presents from all the emirs and great merchants, and they were in new delight and gladness, exceeding the gladness of festival. Then they ceased not abiding in solace and pleasance and good cheer, and abounding prosperity, eating and drinking with mirth and merriment, till there came to them the destroyer of delights and sunderer of societies, waster of houses and palace domes, and peopler of the bellies of the tomb. So they were removed from worldly stead, and became of the number of the dead, and glory be to the living one, who dieth not, and whose hand the keys of the seen and the unseen. And a tale was also told by the Emir Suja al-Din, prefect of Cairo anent. The man of Upper Egypt and his Frankish wife. We lay one night in the house of a man of Said of Upper Egypt, and he entertained us and entreated us hospitably. Now he was a very old man, swart with exceeding swarthiness, and he had little children, who were white, of a white dashed with red. So we said to him, Harkai, such an one, how cometh it that these children are white, whilst thou thyself art passing swart? And he said, Thy mother was a Frankish woman, whom I took prisoner in the days of al-Malik al-Nashir Salah ad-Din, after the battle of Hattin, when I was a young man. We asked, And how gottest thou her? And he answered, I had a rare adventure with her. Quoth we, Favour us with it. And quoth he, With all my heart. You must know that I once sowed a crop of flax in these parts, and pulled it, and sketched it, and spent it on 500 gold pieces, after which I would have sold it, but could not get more than this, therefore, and the folk said to me, Carry it to the acre, for there will happily make good gain by it. Now Acre was then in the hands of the Franks, so I carried my flax thither, and sold part of it at 6 months' credit. One day as I was selling, behold, there came up a Frankish woman. Now 'tis the custom of women of the Franks to go about the market streets with unveiled faces, to buy flax of me, and I saw of her beauty what dazed my wits. So I sold her somewhat of the flax, and was easy with her concerning the price. And she took it, and she went away. Some days after she returned, and bought somewhat more flax of me, and I was yet easier with her about the price. And she repeated her visits to me, seeing that I was in love with her. Now she was used to walk in the company of an old woman, to whom I said, I am sore enamoured of thy mistress. Canst thou contrive for me to enjoy her? Quoth she, I will contrive this for thee, but the secret must not go beyond us three, me, thee, and her. And there is no help but thou be lavish with money to boot. And I answered, saying, Though my life were the price of her favours, 'twere no great matter. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 895th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the old woman said to the man, However, the secret must not go beyond us three, to wit me, thee, and her, and there is no help but thou be lavish of thy money to boot. He replied, Though my life were the price of her favours, 'twere no great matter. So it was agreed, continued the man of Upper Egypt, that I should pay her 50 dinars, and that she should come to me, whereupon I procured the money and gave it to the old woman. She took it and said, Make ready a place for her in thy house, and she will come to thee this night. Accordingly I went home and made ready what I could of meat and drink, and wax candles and sweetmeats. Now my house overlooked the sea, and 'twas the season of summer, so I spread the bed on the terrace roof. Presently the Frank woman came, and we ate and drank, and the night fell dark. We lay down under the sky and the moon shining on us, and fell to watching the shimmering of the stars in the sea. And I said to myself, Art thou not ashamed before Allah, to whom might and majesty be, and thou a stranger under the heavens, in the presence of the deep waters, to disobey him with a Nazarene woman, and merit the torment of fire? Then said I, O my God, I call thee to witness that I abstain from this Christian woman this night of shamefastness before thee, and fear of thy vengeance. So I slept till morning, and she arose at the peep of day, full of anger, and went away. I walked to my shop, and sat there, and behold, presently she passed as she were the moon, accompanied by the old woman, who was also angry, whereat my heart sank within me. And I said to myself, Who art thou, that thou shouldest refrain from yonder damsel? Art thou Sari al-Sakati, or Bashir barefoot, or Junyan of Baghdad, or Fujial bin Yazaz? Then I ran after the old woman, coming up with, and said to her, Bring her to me again. And said she, By the virtue of the Messiah, she will not return to thee but for 100 ducats. Quoth I will give thee 300 gold pieces. So I paid her the money, and the damsel came to me a second time. But no sooner was she with me, and I returned to my whilom way of thinking, and abstained from her, and forbear her for the sake of Allah Almighty. Presently she went away, and I walked to my shop, and shortly after the old woman came up in a rage. Quoth I to her, Bring her to me again. And quoth she, By the virtue of the Messiah, thou shalt never again enjoy her presence with thee except for 500 ducats, and thou shalt perish in thy pain. At this I trembled, and resolved to expend the whole price of my flax, and therewith ransom my life. But before I could think, I heard the crier proclaiming and saying, Ho, all ye Moslems, the truce which was between us and you is expired, and we give all of you Mohammedans, who are here a week from this time, to have done with your business and depart to your own country. Thus her visits were cut off from me, and I betook myself to begetting in the price of flax which men had bought upon credit, and bartering what remained in my hand and other goods. Then I took with me fair merchandise, and departed Acre with a soul full of affection and love-longing for the Frankish woman, who had taken my heart and my coin. So I journeyed till I made Damascus, where I sold the stock and trade I had brought from Acre at the highest price, because of the cutting off of the communication by reason of the term of truce having expired. And Allah, extolled and exalted be He, vouchsafed me good gain. Then I fell to trading in captive slave girls, thinking thus to ease my heart of its pining for the Frankish woman. And in this traffic engaged I abode 3 years, till there befell me between Al-Malik al-Nasir and the Franks what befell of the action of Hattin and other encounters, and Allah gave him victory over him, so that he took all their king prisoners, and he opened the coast cities by his leave. Now it fortuned one day after this that a man came up to me and sought of me a slave girl for Al-Malik al-Nasir. Having a handsome handmaid, I showed her to him, and he bought her of me for 100 dinars, and gave me 90 thereof, leaving 10 still due to me, for that there was no more found in the royal treasury that day, because he expended all of his money in waging war against the Franks. Accordingly they took counsel with him, and he said, Carry him to the treasury, where are the captives lodging, and give him his choice among the damsels of the Franks, so he may take one of them for the 10 dinars. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 896th night, she continued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that whenas Al-Malik al-Nasir said, Give him his choice to take one of the girls for the 10 dinars that are due him, they brought me to the captives' lodging, and showed me all of them that were in, and I saw amongst them the Frankish damsel, with whom I had fallen in love at Acre, and knew her right well. Now she was one of the wife of one of the cavaliers of the Franks. So I said, Give me this one, and carrying her to my tent, asked her, Dost thou know me? She answered, No. And I rejoined, I am thy friend, the somewhat flax merchant with whom thou hadst to do at Acre, and there befell between us what befell. Thou tookest money of me, and saidst, Thou shalt never see me but for 500 dinars, and now art thou become my property for 10 ducats. Quoth she, This is a mystery. Thy faith is the true faith, and I testify that there is no God but the God, and that Muhammad is the messenger of God. And she made perfect profession of all Islam. Then I said to her, By Allah, I will not go in unto thee till I have set her free and acquainted the Qazi. So I betook myself to Ibn Shaddid, and told him what had passed, and he married me to her. Then I lay with her that night she conceived, after which the troops departed, and we returned to Damascus. But within a few days there came an envoy from the king of the Franks to seek the captives and the prisoners according to the treaty between the kings. So Al-Malik al-Nasir restored all the men and women captive till there remained but the woman who was with me. And the Franks said, The wife of such a knight is not here. Then they asked after her, and making strict search for her, found that she was with me. Whereupon they demanded her of me, and I went in to her sore concerned, and with colour changed, and said to her, What aileth thee, and what evil assaileth thee? Quoth I, A messenger is come from the king to take all the captives, and they demand thee of me. Quoth she, Have no fear. Bring me to the king, and I know what to say before and to him. And I carried her into the presence of the Sultan Al-Malik al-Nasir, who was seated, with the envoy of the king of the Franks on his right hand. And I said to him, This is the woman that is with me. Then quoth the king and the envoy to her, Wilt thou go to thy country, or to thy husband? For Allah hath loosed thy bonds, and those of thy fellow captives. Quoth she to the Sultan, I am become a Moslema, and am great with child, as by my middle eye may see, and the Franks shall have no more profit of me. The envoy asked, Whether is dearer to thee this Moslem, or thy husband the knight, such an one? And she answered him even as she had answered the Sultan. Then said to the envoy the Frank with him, Heard ye her words? They replied, Yes. And he said to me, Take thy wife, and depart with her. So I took her, and went away. But the envoy sent after me in haste, and cried, Her mother gave me a charge for her, saying, My daughter is a captive and naked, and I would have thee carry her this chest. Take it thou, and deliver it to her. Accordingly, I carried the chest home, and gave it to her. She opened it, and found in it all her raiment, as she had left it. And therein I saw 2 purses of 50 and 100 dinars, which I had given her untouched, and tied up with my own tying. Wherefore I praised Almighty Allah. These are my children by her, and she is alive to this day, and 'twas she dressed you this food. We marveled at this story, and that which had befallen him of good fortune. And Allah is all-knowing. But men also tell a tale anent the ruined man of Baghdad and his slave girl. There was of old time in Baghdad a man of condition who had inherited from his father abounding affluence. He fell in love with a slave girl, so he bought her, and she loved him as he loved her, and he ceased not to spend upon her till all his money was gone, and naught remained thereof. Whereupon he sought a means of getting his livelihood, but availed not to find any. Now this young had been used, in the days of his affluence, to frequent the assemblies of those who were versed in the art of singing, and thus attained to the utmost excellence therein. Presently he took the counsel with one of his intimates, who said to him, Meseems thou canst find no better profession than to sing, thou and thy slave girl, and for on this wise thou wilt get money in plenty, and will eat and drink. But he misliked this, he and the damsel, and said to himself, I have bethought me of a means of relief for thee. He asked, What is it? And she answered, Do thou sell me. Thus shall we be delivered of this strait, thou and I shall be in affluence, for none will buy the like of me save a man of fortune, and with this I will contrive for my return to thee. He carried her to the market, and the first who saw her was Hashim of Bassorah, a man of good breeding, fine taste, and generosity, who bought her for 1,500 dinars. Quoth the young man, the damsel's owner, When I had received the price, I repented me, and I wept, and the damsel and I sought to cancel the sale, but the purchaser would not consent. So I took the gold in a bag, and knowing not whether I should win, now my house was desolate of her, and buffeted my face, and wept and wailed as I had never done before. Then I entered a mosque, and sat shedding tears till I was stupefied, and losing my senses fell asleep with the bag of money under my head by way of pillow. Presently, ere I could be ware, a man plucked the bag from under my head, and ran off with it at full speed. Whereupon I started up in alarm and affright, and would have arisen to run after him, but lo, my feet were bound with a rope, and I fell on my face. Then I took to weeping and buffeting myself, saying, Thou hast parted with thy soul, and thy wealth is lost. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my telling of this tale for today, till it be morrow.